I am Nadine Carty-Keynes, and thank you for joining us at the Nevis Emergency Operations Center, EOC, today, Monday, 29th June 2020, for an update on the situation regarding the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, here on Nevis. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all viewers and media houses that have joined us virtually. All questions will be taken at the end of all questions will be taken at the end after all speakers would have presented. The Nevis COVID-19 briefing will be aired on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. on Nevis Television. Or you can check the briefings on YouTube and Facebook pages of Nevis Television, Nevis HPU, and Nevis Disaster Management Department Facebook page and YouTube channel. Additionally, briefings can be listened to on Von Radio every Tuesday at 1 p.m. With us today, we have Mr. Brian Dyer, Director of the Nevis Emergency Operations Center, Mr. Lyndon David, Superintendent of Police, Nevis Division, Dr. Judy Nisbet, Chair of the Nevis COVID-19 Task Force, and finally, we have Mr. Huey Sargent, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, ETA. I want to say welcome to everyone. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Brian Dyer to make his presentation.
Good evening, all. I'd like to start with some weather information regarding some activity in the Eastern Atlantic ahead of the Windward Islands, that is. At 2 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, the National Hurricane Center has issued a bulletin with regards to some disorganized showers and thunderstorms located several hundred miles east of the southern Windward Islands that are associated with a tropical wave. Some slight development of the system is possible during the next day or so, while it moves westwards to west-northwest around 20 miles per hour. Strong upper-level winds are forecast to inhibit further development by midweek. Formation chance through 48 hours low at 10%, and formation chance through 5 days low at 10%. I'd like to appeal to our audience and the general public that we have started the hurricane season since early May, and it is important that you get your act together with regards to preparedness to face the rest of the hurricane season. Get your homes and shelter supplies, and your family disaster plan should be in order. This time we move on to some statistics from the COVID Compliance Task Force team. This team has indicated that they continue to inspect some facilities and offices. To date, they have inspected 556, conducted 556 inspections. And for the month, for today, the 26th up to the 26th of June, they have completed bakeries and delis 7, banks and financial institutions 13, buses, taxis and ferries 21, game room 2, gas stations 9, government buildings and departments 101, laundromats 3, market vendors 4, mechanic shops 17, pharmacies 2, offices 81, restaurants 25, saloon and barber shops 21, shops 28, snackets and bars 59, stores 60, street vendors 11, supermarkets 7, funeral home 2, gyms 3, car wash 3, wholesale 2, radio station and communications 2, manufacturing 10, visits to churches 93, revisits 63. Grand total now stands at 649 with the inclusion of the polling stations. Now statistics from the airport. The Ransom International continues to receive persons, and persons are continuing their departure from the island of Nevis. From the period 25th of June to 27th of June, we have seen an additional 22 persons who departed the island, and we have had 2 persons in. So the grand total, we have had 278 persons who have departed the island, and we have had 15 in at this time, and another 6 will be coming in this evening. Finally, the Ministry of Health has completed the distribution of face masks throughout the island of Nevis. I have a sample of what was distributed. This face mask comes with 2 filters that can be interchanged once the mask is washed. 2 filters. It also comes with a filter on the outside that can be popped off, and then you remove the rubber seal that is in the filter, and then you replace the filter by squeezing. Here the clip. This removal of the rubber filter improve the breathability of the mask and make it more comfortable. The triangular portion of the mask fits under your chin, and the wire section above, should be clamped on your nose. I will demonstrate. And the wire clamp to your nose. Triangle portion under your chin, and inhale and exhale, ensuring that the filter works. On the interior of the mask has a pocket where the PM 2.5 filter should fit. Slides in, and you can, the other side you can ensure that you can pull it through. I hope it works. That's how the interior should look. Again, the triangle portion fits under your chin. Straps are adjustable to fit over your ears. And the wire on the top clamps onto your nose.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer, for your update and a wonderful presentation on how to use the mask that was distributed island-wide. I'd now like to welcome Superintendent David as he'll provide his updates.
Thank you very much, Nadine. Good evening to all. As usual, before I go into information regarding restrictions and guidance, I will give you some statistical information. Thus far, we have conducted 1,001 patrols throughout the island of Nevis, 88 vehicle checkpoints, 41 arrests were made and 10 persons charged, 13 crimes were reported during the period, and 4 arrests were made. In terms of vehicles stopped, we have 3,238, and 11 persons were informed that they will be summoned for the various offenses that were committed. Currently, we are now working under our new regulations, regulation number 27 of 2020, Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 10. And this came into effect at 5 a.m. on Saturday, 27th of June, and will expire at 5:59 on Saturday, the 25th of July, 2020. The day of limited operation remains the same, and that is from 5 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Night curfew remains the same, and that is from midnight to 4:59 the following day. Just to remind all persons that educational places for instructions, they are closed, which they will remain closed. Also, we know many persons have been venturing off to the beaches, but the regulation states that they should be there for swimming and exercises. So therefore, no picnics, no parties, and other gatherings. We have something new in the regulation wherein persons who are engaged in sports, whether it's track and field, martial arts, football, you are now given the opportunity to go and practice your sport. However, social distancing, physical distancing must be adhered to. Persons must wear the mask at all times. However, there's an exception. Once persons are exercising and you know you cannot breathe properly whilst using the mask, you should remove the mask and continue with your exercise. Persons must also continue hand sanitization. During the day of limited operation, I just want to remind all restaurant owners and food vendors that you are allowed to open up to 10 p.m. All businesses are also encouraged to comply with the task force as they come around and give you guidance and instructions. We're also saying to persons who are venturing off in public spaces for various reasons, wear your mask at all times. To the bus drivers, though there is no restriction on the number of persons that you can carry, you, the bus driver, must wear your mask and encourage all passengers to wear their mask, and you must have your hand sanitizer when they enter. Persons who are attending funerals and weddings, you are to ensure that you have a person per distance where you have 6 feet between them all around. So therefore you are to ensure that persons comply with the social distancing and the physical distancing and hand sanitization. At this time we have persons occupying the quarantine site. We are saying to persons, loved ones, remember it's an offense to visit these facilities. So we are saying to you, you can communicate with your loved ones via the cell phone, or you want to use Skype or Zoom, you can do so. But to physically go there, you will be breaching the regulation and you will be summoned or arrested. So we're saying to you, comply, and in a matter of days, they will be out. As a matter of fact, I do believe that once all goes well, maybe by the end of the week or early next week, you might see them. So we are saying to you, just comply and let us have a good process taking place. Finally, I take this opportunity to thank God for his continued mercies and blessings on the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, wherein we are having good results, and the persons who are working hard, they are ensuring that we continue to remain safe. The governments, federal and local alike, staff of the Royal St. Kitts and Nevis Police Force here in Ireland, medical staff, disaster staff, and other essential workers for your hard work and dedication. And I've said to you, those persons who continue to give us support, continue to do so. And we are saying also to persons who, from time to time, we violate. Remember, we're dealing with COVID-19, and it has been devastating throughout the world. Ensure that it does not happen here in Nevis and the Federation at large. So we want you to come on board and help us to prevent COVID-19 being spreading throughout our Federation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent David, for your update. I would now like to welcome Dr. Judy Nesbitt, Chair of the Nevis COVID-19 Task Force, to provide her updates.
Good evening to everyone. The number of persons tested on Nevis remain at 124, with 120 testing negative and 4 testing positive. We have no active cases. There are 14 persons currently in quarantine, while a total of 242 persons have been released from quarantine. There are no persons in isolation. The persons who are in quarantine are persons who have repatriated to Nevis. I want to take this opportunity to outline the procedure for repatriation of nationals to Nevis during this period while the borders are closed. We are getting more and more applications for repatriation, and so this is important. Application for repatriation should be made to the Nevis COVID-19 Task Force at drjudy.nisbet, Nisbett, at niagov.com. The anticipated time for processing an application is a minimum of 5 working days. The application should outline personal information, including full name, as in passport, date of birth, gender, personal email address, mobile number, occupation, proof of citizenship or residency, home address in Nevis, and home telephone number. Any additional family members traveling with you, the same information applies. We would also need in the application the travel information, including port of embarkation, proposed carrier, and the proposed date of travel. We are saying proposed because we would not encourage you to make a confirmed flight prior to knowing whether or not it would be possible to accommodate you. Once the application is approved by the task force and the Nevis Air and Seaports Authority, an email will be sent along with the quarantine or the isolation contract to be signed and returned to the task force. Just a reminder that quarantine is the restriction of movement and the separation of persons who are well but may have been exposed to the coronavirus, and to monitor for symptoms and to detect cases early. So persons may have been exposed because of their travel history, and therefore that is why it's important that persons are quarantined. Quarantine will be for 14 days and is subject to conditions outlined in the Quarantine Act and the Emergency Powers Act 2020. Upon arrival, all persons are transported in an assigned vehicle to the quarantine site. So it means then that loved ones cannot pick up relatives at the airport once they come in, or at the seaport once they come in. There will be absolutely no visitation to this site by family members. Only authorized persons are allowed at the quarantine site. This site is under police guard 24 hours per day. Each unit or room reserved for applicants at the quarantine site is air-conditioned, is self-contained, and has internet access. However, items that need to be provided by relatives or friends include beddings, toiletries, cooking utensils, groceries, and cleaning supplies. Family members are allowed to take food or other supplies to the disaster management offices at Long Point daily. Items are delivered twice daily to the quarantine site, that is at 1 p.m. and at 5 p.m. During quarantine, persons are monitored daily by the health team for development of any symptoms suggestive of COVID-19. A COVID-19 test will be done on day 14 of quarantine, which will determine whether or not a person is released from quarantine. However, anyone developing symptoms or signs suggestive of COVID-19 during the quarantine period will also be tested. So as I said, we are having more and more persons showing an interest in returning, and so it's important to have a better idea of the process. Now, like Mr. Dyer says, on another note, we have completed mass distribution on Nevis. All households have been visited, and adults have been supplied with masks. We could not have done this without the many volunteers from the Ministry of Health, the Emergency Operations Center, and other citizens who gave of their valuable time. I wish to say then thank you to everyone who assisted. It was hard work, but it was worth it. And we encourage all persons to make use of their masks, wear their masks when in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Judy Nisbet, for your updates. Final presenter is Mr. Huey Sargent, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, et al.
Good evening. The Ministry of Agriculture continues to ensure that we have food security on the island. Just today, June 29th, we restarted our seedling and seed distribution, and I must say up to this time, we found that the response has been overwhelming. I am awaiting information as to whether or not we have more seedlings to distribute, but the response has been overwhelming, and we continue to be encouraged by the number of persons who are interested and are continuing to farm. We also, from the marketing division, will be distributing seeds in the coming days, so those who have not received seedlings are unable to get seedlings. We will be distributing seeds in the coming days. We continue to believe that food security is, local food security helps the immune system, and we continue to encourage you to buy and eat local. We also have a special from the fisheries complex where fishermen and fishers are being offered fishing gear and supplies at 50% cost. And we are encouraging fishers to take advantage, as this is part, well, it continues to be part of the government's stimulus package, and we are expecting some wires in the very near future for those fishermen who would not have received as yet. So those are the two updates we have from the Ministry and Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent, for your updates. I'll now welcome questions from our media houses.
My question is to Dr. Judy Nisbet, and it deals with quarantine. Is there a charge for quarantine for persons that will be quarantined? And if so, what is it for?
Thank you, Ms. Washington, for that question. Currently, there's no charge for quarantine. However, persons will be required to pay for the COVID-19 test at the end of quarantine. Just a reminder that I am speaking for Nevis. So there's no charge currently on Nevis. Thank you.
Monique Washington again, observer. Question to Mr. Sargent as it relates to the animals on the island. What is going to assist livestock farmers at this point of time when it comes to their livestock? The place is dry. Are they given feed or anything like that, or water or anything like that?
Ms. Washington, as a farmer, the government would have provided free water for 6 months for all farmers, whether livestock or crop farmers. So livestock farmers should be benefiting from that as well. And we also have a number of training initiatives that is being put on by the Livestock Extension Unit, where we can help you to make supplemental feeds using grass, molasses, and there's a formula, but I can't remember the formula exactly. But that helps to supplement the feeding for animals here on the island. And we encourage you to fence. We also recently gave out some fencing wire to assist farmers who, livestock farmers specifically, to keep their animals in their pens. Okay, I'm seeing a question here. You're welcome. I'm seeing a question here from Von Radio. The VON Newsline has learned that there are a number of snakes surfacing at various places around the island. Currently, there's a picture circulating of another snake that was found over the weekend, this time with 15 to 16 eggs. What is the Department of Agriculture doing about this matter? Please, when you see these snakes, please, if you can destroy the snake, please do. If you can't, please call the Department of Agriculture and we will do our best to rectify the matter. Just a note about the snakes though. They are what we call corn snakes, and they would have surfaced maybe late 90s, and we have two theories working with about how they got here, but obviously they are not indigenous to Nevis. What we do know, they are not harmful to humans. We realize from our research as well that they focus on small rodents such as rats and mice. I can tell you as well that they grow to a maximum of 5 to 6 feet. However, based on our information, the snakes are not venomous and they are no natural predators. So that is why we're encouraging the destruction of them. But in terms of what the Department of Agriculture is doing, we encourage you to be vigilant and to report all sightings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Follow-up question from Von Radio. Do you have any plans of fumigating areas or hotspots such as Cades Bay Fountain, Cotton Ground, and Jessops? More needs to be done, whether they are not poisonous. I'm sure they can bite. Mr. Sargent.
We understand the fears, but we currently do not have any plans to do any sort of fumigation for snakes.
Von Radio to Mr. Sargent. How effective is your quarantine when it comes to the importation of plants? And are there frequent meetings kept or workshops in order to keep your employees up to date with their training in this area?
Thank you, Ms. Budgeon, for that question. Our quarantine is as effective as they could be. No system is 100% foolproof. The importation of plants and so on, we do our regular checks once a container with plants is being imported on the island. We have to go, and our quarantine team has to inspect, and we inspect every plant as closely as possible. Sometimes things get through, other times they don't. If we find instances where there are, like these, snakes, snails, anything that is not indigenous to the island, we normally just fumigate the container. After fumigation is done and the animals do not die, we fumigate again until the animals die. If they don't die, we close the container and send it back to its origins. That's the procedure. But as I said, nothing is 100% foolproof, but we do our best that we can, and training is done pretty regularly, both local and regional. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. We have our final question on radio for Mr. Lyndon David. Dr. Nisbet, Dr. Laws, and even you, Superintendent David, continue to remind persons weekly of wearing their mask and abide by the social distancing protocols. It is quite evident that a large group of our citizens are not adhering. We ask once again, what is the security force doing about this? For example, a few parties are still being held, whether on the beach or at their homes, and persons are forgetting to distance themselves from each other, especially on the weekends.
Thank you very much for that question. We continue to interact with persons, educating them, warning them. And as mentioned earlier, persons were summoned and arrested for various breaches. At this point, as we see where the regulations are being changed in terms of making it sort of possible to get back to normal, we are making the necessary adjustments and educating the public as to the contents of the regulations, which I did briefly. However, I will encourage the general public to know more by actually getting a copy of the regulation to read for themselves. And you can get that at government headquarters in St. Kitts, or you can go on the government website in order to get the updated regulations. In terms of on the beaches, I will say to you, on Saturday night, we had reason to go to Pennis Beach and close a number of bars that were open when they should be closed. And we will be taking it a little further because we believe that education is important and informing people. But as time goes on, persons will be taken to the court. So I will say to you, we are doing what we can do, but we are just encouraging persons in the meantime as they process the information. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you, Superintendent David, for your responses. I want to say thank you to all our presenters this evening and to all the media houses that joined us. And I also want to remind persons to follow the instructions given under the new SRNO 27. Additionally, persons are reminded that in order to protect themselves and others, that you wash your hands frequently with soap and water, or sanitize your hands with a hand sanitizer when water and soap is not available. Cover your cough and sneeze with a tissue or flex elbow and dispose of tissue in a closed bin and wash hands immediately. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unclean hands. Disinfect touch areas and surfaces often. Eat vegetables, fruits, drink plenty of water, and get some exercise. Practice your physical distancing always. Use face mask/covering when in public. Mask must cover your mouth and nose. And stay at home if you don't need to move about. Again, our hotline number is 311 or 661-5051. I want to say thank you to the Nevis Disaster Management, Nevis Television, Caribbean Digital Display Limited, Cornerstone, and Task Force members for making these briefings possible. I am Nadine Carty-Keynes, and please join us on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. for another Nevis COVID-19 briefing here on Nevis Television or on Run Radio at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays. Thank you for viewing, and please do stay safe.